Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you. And thanks for joining us. Do me a huge favor. Share the gospel. Share the good news of this podcast with everybody you know. Okay, maybe not everybody, but how about your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors? Share it with them so that they, just like you, can have a happy Thursday. But you know it's more than just having a happy Thursday. It's about having a happy and blessed life. So come on, share, and welcome to Theology on Thursday. For many of you that are frequent listeners and viewers, you already know that this podcast is a space where we bring theology off the bookshelf and into the hearts of our daily lives. Each Thursday, we wrestle with the questions of life and faith and hope through open, real, and honest conversations. Now, simply put, if you really wanted me to define theology, it really is simply the study of God. But if I wanted to go broader, I would probably say it is really the study of faith, the study of our practices, our experiences in faith with God. Now, it is my hope and intention that we can see every Thursday how we can apply what we study, what we know, what we experience, what we find out when it comes to our spiritual lives into our own daily lives. What good does it do for us to read the Bible and to pray and to sing if we're not able to then transfer that into our daily living? I think it was James Cone who makes the point that theology must be contextual, that it must arise from lived experiences. And I would probably say living experiences. And so that's what we do here on Theology on Thursday. We simply try to make theology live in every one of our daily lives. And so on today's episode, on this week's episode, what about a theology of migration? Do we need to better understand God and ourselves when it comes to movement? That God and I move. Now, already, I'm not just talking about physically. I'm talking about mentally. I'm talking about spiritually. That God desires us to move, to expand, not stay in the box, not just sit there, but to really grow and to develop, to move and to migrate. I probably would already say that there is probably some reluctancy in some of us, and it might be built in. There might be a reluctancy, a fear of moving, expanding your thoughts, expanding your horizons. There's a fear that already might exist. And so, how do we overcome that fear so that we actually do move, so that we actually do expand, so that we actually do experience more, so that we actually do migrate? Migration is not about a moment. Migration is about a movement. It is about a changing. It's about an experience where you are altering how you are living, because there is a liberty in movement. And so we really want to know, how does God reside or even preside in the moving or migrating of individuals? God doesn't just watch divinely, but I really believe that God is divinely engaged in how, why, and even when we move. So the theme for today's show, a theology of migration, God and I in movement. That's what's happening today on Theology on Thursday. So the theme for today's episode is a theology of migration, God and I in movement. How do I move? How is God moving with me? Both physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So here are a few thoughts I have. I have a book, well, really books, coming out. So I guess this is kind of somewhat of an announcement, though I might have already said something in social media about the first book coming out. But the first book coming out is entitled Returning Home, Black Theology, Migration, and the Flourishing of the Black Church. And it really is a version of my own doctoral dissertation that I did at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. And it takes a look into the new Great Migration and how changing demographics are occurring in the South. Now, the Great Migration, which happened right after slavery, saw African-American people moving to the North, the Midwest, the West. It was part of the explosion that allowed cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago, and Detroit to grow in population. But what we're seeing now, particularly over the last 40 years, is that Great Migration has ended, and now there is a new Great Migration, where people from the North, the Midwest, and the West are moving south. And so because of that, I looked into and began to research, what do churches need to do? How do churches develop ways to engage with these new migrants? Because these aren't Southern-born individuals. They're coming from the East. They're coming from the Midwest. What does the church need to do to engage with these new individuals who are coming to the South? Now, out of that writing, there is the concept, there is a theological construct, I think, that really emerges in the research. And it is that there is a need to understand what we read, hear, and see about migratory movements of African Americans. And I believe that there is a theology that undergirds those movements. It undergirds the historical writings of authors such as Isabel Wilkerson and others. There is a theology that is underneath all of that, that helps to understand, even from a theological aspect, what is occurring in the life of African Americans and in the life of their relationship with God and what God is divinely doing. And so that I offer that while we understand that there is a theology of migration, I push it a little further and say that there is actually a Black theology of migration. That God is present, that God divinely ordains the movement or the people migrating as part of a divine plan for personal and communal flourishing, as well as allowing people to become agents of social change because of their ability to move. And so there is a theology of migration. There is a need to understand how God and I move together in sync, how God leads me and how I follow, how God directs me and I go, how God pushes me and I expand my thoughts, how God encourages me and I expand my very soul. This is what we're talking about, God and I in movement. a theology of migration. Today, that's what we're talking about on Theology on Thursday.
There's a unique way of telling any story, and words matter. Not just the words themselves, but how you use those words. Things like rhythm, cadence, rhyming, alliteration, the kinds of things that cause people to lean in and say, wait a minute, could you say that again? I want to make sure I heard that right. In our program, you will learn not what to say, but also how to say it, and what are the best ways for a variety of people to be able to hear it? Some of us will have the opportunity to speak God's truth in communities that are like the ones we grew up in. Many of us will be called to communities very different than we are familiar with. This degree and the community of students that you will share your learnings with will include people from different denominations, different areas across the country, even different people around the world, because God's family is every nation, every tongue, and every tribe. Come, learn to speak God's truth in a microcosm of the kingdom of God.
It is Theology on Thursday, and I'm thankful to have one of my good friends joining us on this episode. And I think you will not be disappointed as we are continuing down this theme of how do I operate with a theology of migration, that God and I are in movement together. And before we came into this segment, I kind of shared my own thoughts about how the divine movement of people, that God has that in his divine will, and that the actual migratory movement, particularly of African Americans, is something that is divinely led and divinely inspired. And that for me kind of pushed out and emerged the thought of the Black theology of migration, a theology of migrations. There is an understanding, there is an underpinning, there is a structure theologically of how we are able to move. And I shared, Dr. Weathers, before you came on, that really it is in that opportunity to migrate, it's in that opportunity to move, that God gives us or shows us the importance of human mobility. And in that human mobility, the importance of freedom. And in that freedom and that opportunity to be mobile makes us agents of social change. And that when God blesses us to move, he's not just doing it so that we feel blessed in the new location, but he's moved us so that we can really be the agents of social change that help change an entire community, neighborhood, and even the world. So that was my premise coming into it, my thoughts coming into this conversation about God and I and movement, theology of migration. I didn't want to have this conversation alone, so I reached out to the Reverend Dr. Wayne Weathers. Wow. Who is a pastor, who is a political consultant, business owner, you name it, he just about does it. He is adjunct professor for a number of institutions, particularly Palmer Theological Seminary right outside of Philadelphia. And so I'm glad to have Dr. Weathers on with us today on Theology on Thursday. And so, Dr. Wayne, I want you to pick it up where I left it off. Is this, how do we really feel about this whole notion of God and I in movement, and that God is in the midst of, in the midst of all of this migratory movement, this opportunity for us to move and be mobile, and to really use that as an opportunity for us to be agents of social change?
Hey, well, thanks a lot, Reverend Dr. Micah. If this was off camera, I would just say Micah, but Reverend Dr. Micah.
I know we're trying to be professional. We would normally say Wayne and Micah, and so if y'all hear that, we're not disrespecting each other. It's just the way we talk.
Known each other almost 20 years.
Yeah.
When you think about the whole concept of God movement, and I don't say this from a generic perspective, but the only reason why we're able to move because he's moving or have moved. You got me? If you look in the movement from a theological and biblical perspective, mere fact that the world was created was because of God's movement, it created change. When you look at Genesis chapter 12, when God gave Abram instructions, it required him to move. When you look at the travels of the Israelites, it required them to move. You follow me? To get to the promised land required them to move. And I guess from a Trinitarian perspective, when you look at the fact that, the doctrine of the end times, we're not staying in the grave. You know,
Right, right,
we're moving. Some are either going to move up and others are going to permanently move down. The bottom line is it's about movement. I don't believe that our God is a stagnant God.
mm,
I don't believe that God calls us, I believe in one of the epistles, I can't remember exact, but I remember the terminology. We are his workmanship. So
mm,
we are his workmanship. We were not designed to be stagnant in one social location. It requires us to move. If our age is moving from one year after the next, right? Um,
right, right, right,
I got a birthday coming in about 2 weeks. So my age is not staying stagnant. If my age can move, if the movement of the spirit will move, then why do people think that we are just to remain stagnant? We're not meant to we're not to practice a theology of stagnation, which means that we just stay stagnant in the pews on Sunday, and then we move to come in, we move to go out, but we don't move to come back in.
right.
We only move to come back in. No, God is a God of movement. And I do believe that God is a God that requires us to migrate from one social location to another to bring about social change.
So let's expand the construct, if you will,
Sure.
that so that everybody with us can just jump into this. Is that we're not just talking about physical movement. That for both of us, I think both of us theologically, that migratory movement involves the moving of the mind,
Hmm.
the moving of the spirit,
Hmm.
and at times the moving of the body, because all of that really is something that God desires for us to do, because it is a way for us to flourish. Would you not agree? And so therefore, when we're having this conversation about movement, I don't want you to just think about it as physical movement, but I want you to really develop your faith as you're listening to this podcast and watching this podcast today, that it is really about you being able to move your mind and to move your spirit from being stationary and static, as you indicated, to being mobile and developing, etc. Dr. Wayne, would you say?
So let me share just a personal narrative to
Yeah.
add to what you just said about spiritual movement, mind movement, physical movement. So when I'm in seminary, right, one of the first social justice fight that I engaged in was with a nonprofit African American housing organization that we felt was not treating people fair. You follow? And the owners actually lived across the street from the house that we got from.
Mm-hmm.
Fight was going on. I was like, yo, I ain't got time for this. I'm in seminary. I'm calling myself a liberation theologian, but I'm calling myself a liberation theologian from a academic perspective, not a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual practical perspective. I'll tell the story to say this. I'm saying it just like I am, like it was 1998 to be exact, 97 to be exact. So I pull up in my driveway in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Gary put the key in the door, and I hear the Spirit of the Lord say to me that you call yourself a liberation theologian. When are you going to practice it?
Mm.
Meaning that here it is. You got social injustice going on, and you call yourself a liberation theologian, but you fail to move, and and engage in the fight. And
Wow.
so, yeah. And so I piggyback off of what you said to say that it was spiritually for me to get involved because I was comfortable not getting involved. That was
Mm.
their fight. I don't want the smoke. I don't want the heat. I don't want the drama. You follow me?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not a punk, but this was not worth my time. you know. I got at the time 2 kids, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're trying to do what you need to do to
one is
survive,
one
to
is one,
pay.
the other was
Right, yeah.
yeah, I have 3 children now, but at the time they were small. It's just like, how can I study and get involved in this fight? But it was through that particular spiritual encounter that my mind changed, right? My whole concept of the fight changed, and got involved. Did I take some blows? Oh yeah, I definitely took some blows. But throughout a year, about 18 months, or maybe a year or 18 months, I don't remember the time frame. It was only a few of us. I'm the only one that's still living. And those who fought with me was only about 3 of us to be exact. And we were able to lobby
Mm.
when the town of Chapel Hill wouldn't listen to us, city politicians wouldn't listen to us. We looked at the community block grant specs and everything, went to HUD and made our appeal to HUD. HUD came in, the city of Chapel Hill, and says, recover this money or else we're going to permanently cut you off.
Is that the attack from the devil? And by devil, I'm going to go
Hmm.
spiritual
Yeah.
forces and high places, spiritual authorities, all of that stuff, wicked places, all of that. Y'all know the line is escaping me right now. Is it because of that there has been this notion of fear that has trapped many of us to not be migratory or mobile in our thinking, in our theology, in our living, because the devil says, no, be comfortable, stay where you are, do what you're doing, don't extend yourself beyond where you are. In other words, stay in your square box and mind your business. And so anything outside of that then becomes fear. Just to your point, you've got responsibilities, you've got children, you've got a wife, you're trying to do what you need to do. And so why am I going to risk everything
Hmm.
to get in a fight when I really just need to be taking care of what I need to take care of? And so is that how do everyday people overcome that fear
Hmm.
that is seemingly placed upon us externally and now almost sometimes etched or stitched on the inside of us to not go but so far?
So that's multi-layered. So in one, yeah, that's multi-layered.
That's us having a conversation. Everything we have.
It is definitely spiritual warfare in so
Mhm.
many degrees and everything. But when I say it's multi-layered, so here's one layer of it. It's the fear of, um, it's the fear of, what do I have to lose instead of what do I have to gain? You know, it's a fight that needs to be fought. But if I'm gonna lose something in the midst of the fight, then it's not worth getting involved in the fight because I'm not gaining anything. I'm losing something. You follow
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah. I'm following you. Yeah.
A quick sidebar on that. When I did get into that fight, and this not that nobody threatened me, I was so paranoid because when you start messing with people money, right? And this is major money, right?
Mhm.
It could get real ugly. And I remember, and let me just say as a disclaimer, nobody threatened me or anything like that. But I was so paranoid that when my 27-year-old son, when he was a baby at the time, I remember when I was rocking him to sleep. This is a true story, Micah. I would purposefully turn my back to the window because I said, if anything comes through that window while I'm
Hit you
rocking
first.
my son, I
Yeah.
could not live with myself if it hit him first,
Yeah.
it didn't hit
Yeah.
me. So I'm
Yeah.
literally rocking my son to sleep, thinking that because I've angered some folks, and let me share with you how I angered. I want to get back to the multi-layer. I went to the town of Chapel Hill. Town manager turned red. He turned red like I before we went to HUD, I went to the town of Chapel Hill in front of the mayor, in front of the town council. I'm the new voice. I'm not the leader, but I'm the new voice. And I literally said to him, because that this particular organization did not accomplish the amount of houses that they said that they were going to build, and because you gave them a no interest loan over a certain period of time, and this money has not been paid back, I says, I come to you now to say that you now claim all of their properties in eminent domain, take the money back, seize the money, right, and give it to another nonprofit organization that will
Do the work.
fulfill the obligation of providing affordable housing in the city of Chapel Hill. Man, the town manager got red. I mean, his face,
Oh, I can imagine. Of
red.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
It turned red. Man, we were ostracized in the newspaper, man. They showed up at the church. Like, yeah, he and his family literally showed up at the church. And I'm like,
Wow.
I'm looking like, okay, I'm gonna have to defend myself. I'm like, I'm not. Let me just be real. I'm not a violent person, but I'm like, okay, if you come up, you gonna get it. You gonna get it. You gonna get it. You gonna get it. I'm gonna.
Right, right. That's right.
This is what happened, man. And so, but before I got into it, it was I ain't got time for this because what I envisioned could happen actually did happen. So it's multi-layered. What can I lose compared to and what can I lose compared to what to gain? Here's the other problem. Other layer of that is we've been fed, and you and I, we talked about this a lot, a false theology of complacency.
Mm,
It doesn't align up with we should just be concerned with the word. We don't need to be out here in social transformation or anything like that. We just need to study the word, right? And
right.
preach the word and live the word, but we don't need to be getting involved in all of this
All that other stuff.
all of this other stuff. And yet those who um fed us that jacked up meal, right? They got us in the pews as people of color, but yet they done stacked the Supreme Court, right? They done stacked legislation. They fed us that it's wrong for us to be woke and socially engaged in justice when they are peddling their radical conservative ideology, cloaked in the manner of theology. And
Mm,
the
mm.
other layer to that is when many of us, not many of us per se, but there's a certain segment that's afraid of losing status, you know? And how many times have you heard and I heard in this 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 social justice crusade, um engaging in the theology of God's migration, his movement, right? How many times have we heard you don't want to make this particular politician angry because if we make them angry, we won't have a seat at the table? There's no
Uh,
guarantee you're going to get a seat. And the seat, that's one. And the seat that they give you is really a folding chair. They choose to fold out to let you
it's
sit and
and it's not even the table. That's not the
exactly.
table where they do business. That's the table in the reception area that they have you seated. They
Mhm.
don't have you at the table where the actual work and decisions are made. They just give it's a facade.
Exactly. And so that's why I said it's multi-layered.
Yeah.
It's definitely multi-layered. Liberation theology, social justice is not an adjective, it's an action word.
I think that's hard, Wayne, for a lot of people to really digest because they have viewed it as an adjective or an adverb.
Mhm.
And I think where we are in the life cycle of humanity, it is more imperative now, I believe, than ever for us to lift up, understand that our theology includes social justice. It includes civic engagement. It includes economic development. It includes caring for the least. It includes equitable and equality. It includes all of that. It is not devoid of it. It is part of our theology.
Mhm.
And, I agree with you. I think oftentimes you're right. We probably were misled by just do what the Bible says.
Mhm.
Just do what the word says. Well, wait a minute. What they weren't saying was there is a understanding of the text that breathes life, that they weren't just doing those things. There were other things that were happening as well. So you don't want us to pay attention to the other things that were happening. You just want us to pay attention to what the actual words were. And that's really not true biblical theology.
No, and if migration, right, was not a biblical concept, then Joseph would have never been able to, even though he was captured, migrate into Egypt. You follow
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Israelites would have never left their social construct, went into Egypt, found themselves in bondage because of a lost history. You know, the story about Pharaoh. And then Moses, he left his social location, went to tend to the sheep with his father-in-law Jethro, then migrated back into Egypt, right? Then also to lead the Egyptians out of Egypt to migrate through the wilderness, which should have only been 40 days, was 40 years, but to have them migrate to the promised land, you know?
It's impossible to flourish and to grow without leaving the garden. So I can take you back. Let's just go back to the beginning. It's impossible to multiply and just live in the garden. There has to be some movement. There is going to be some movement. We talked a little bit about some of the migratory movements of particularly African Americans, people of color. In your thinking, in your estimation, when you look at transatlantic slave trade movement, not transatlantic slave movement, Great Migration, New Great Migration, of all of those, which one do you believe has been the most significant for us as a people?
Wow, that's a great question. I do got to mess with you for just 30 seconds, and I'm gonna
No,
get
you good.
seriously some. Trump's gonna cancel your podcast
Why?
because you're focusing too much on slavery. So he gonna cancel your podcast. I just got to mess with you, man.
Man, listen, go ahead, try to cancel it if you want to.
Oh man, you hit a very deep question, man.
And so while you're thinking about, I think this whole funny narrative control of what is positive in America. I thought about this the other day, Wayne. I meant to say it to my wife and I didn't. It took me back to science class. Okay? 2 negatives create a positive.
Positive, that's right.
If we're not willing to admit our negativity, we're not going to be able to become positive. And so I'm not saying you have to magnify the negative, but what you can't do is devoid or take away the negative because it's just there.
So
It's the only way we become positive is by knowing, our mistakes. We say to our children, hey, I want to help guide you because I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did. My job is to help you avoid that. And so if I've got to tell you about the story where it took me more than 4 years to do, my undergrad, or if it took me this amount of time, or if I did this or I did that, I did too much partying in my first year, so my GPA wasn't that great, whatever it is, whatever that negative is that I may not feel necessarily that great about, if I don't share it, we're never going to get to the positive that's going to happen because I'm learning from that negative experience.
My dad taught me when I was a kid. No, I wasn't when I was a kid. I was in my early 20s. A situation happened when I was working in corporate America that really ticked me off. But I never forget, he said to me, he says, Wayne, if you walk this world error-free, you would never learn anything. And
wow.
I take that to heart. Now, going back to your original question and everything, this is a hard one for me, positively hard one. And reason why it's hard, because if I did not go to Ghana about a year ago, right, and go into the slave dungeons, not castles, the slave dungeons, I would have a totally different answer. I would definitely focus on the Great Migration. I will not say that slavery was a blessing. It was a burden. It was terror. It was Hades. But from that migration, it's in the midst of hell that we still found a way to see heaven.
Say more. Say more about that.
So when I say in the midst of how we was able to see heaven, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, it's because of the slave trade we came to know God, because that is a radical right-wing narrative to peddle snake oil like it's anointed oil, which is
I think by now they should have learned we carry God with us across the seas.
Right. But unfortunately,
okay.
There's a younger generation, because I had a heated argument with someone along the same line about back in February, because they're feeding this snake oil narrative to a younger generation that was able to profit materialistically off of our ancestors.
Sure.
They're the ones that are denying the achievement of our ancestors. And so even though we get it, there's now a new generation that doesn't know their history that's arising or, emerging, that's not celebrating the history of our ancestors. But to go back, as you said, we brought the concept of God with us.
Right.
In the midst of hell, we were able to see heaven, because many people think that the construct of liberation theology comes from James Cone, God on the side of the oppressed, or Henry McNeil Turner, the first AME pastor to say that Jesus, that God,
God is the Negro.
yeah, that God is black. But the foundation,
No, no.
is a Negro country.
God is a Negro.
God,
Let's do.
yeah,
I-
yeah, but the foundation of our African American liberation theology is constructed hermeneutically, although that wasn't a word they use, hermeneutically, from the African American slave experience in America, where the
Mm,
slave master was trying to justify which could not be justified, that their enslavement was a result of their false interpretation of the Bible. But then when the African slaves learned, even though they was restricted from reading and writing, they came in contact with the biblical scripture of Exodus. After all the hell that they were going through, putting preachers up to say that your slavery is justified and your abuse is ordained by God, they came in contact with the Moses narrative and basically said that what the slave master is teaching us is a lie.
mm,
Now out of the hell comes now a concept of heaven. Their concept of heaven is is a liberation concept, that God is about freedom. You follow me? God is one who liberates, just like Moses liberated. God liberates. You follow me? Our Negro spirituals that wasn't sung the way Fisk Jubilee singers sang in slavery, but our Negro spirituals, out of hell we created our Negro spirituals. Out of hell we created our own church. Our church is the body of Christ, but it also stands against the racism that's been afflicted upon this people.
well, I mean, the text says, "Then the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." I think that's somewhere in the Bible. I think that is. Wayne, I've made this suggested this premise
Mm-hmm.
that migration is the direct response, both divinely and humanly, to slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Because if slavery holds us, migration moves us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is. So when migration happens, that it is really the first direct response. Well, I guess the first direct response to slavery was to go for freedom. So let me not, but one of the early answers, God, maybe I'll use that. One of the early answers and responses to slavery was migration, thus the Great Migration. And I appreciate you sharing with us today that maybe the transatlantic experience really was the most beneficial for us as a people. But when you think about the Great Migration, you just alluded to the fact that how it helped develop and empower and really make the Black church the Black church. Other than the Black church, what other important and critical aspects arose or emerged in your thinking out of the Great Migration?
Wow, great question. Um, I would say out of the Great Migration, and I don't say this in a generic way, it created a great movement.
Mm,
You got me? Not a great
hmm
moment in our private conversations. You know, it wasn't a moment, it was a movement.
Movement. Yeah.
We moved from slavery to freedom, and even when they reoppressed us, I know that's not a word, but I just created it, they reoppressed us, we still was determined that we were still going to move in the process. Even in our movement, not only was the blessing the church, but we was also innovative as well. You know,
Mm,
we took what they didn't even give us and created. See, movement, the migration that you talked about allows us to be creative as well. You follow me? So
that's
there
good.
would be no
Yeah.
traffic light if there wasn't for African Americans. There wouldn't be the guitar, wouldn't be the refrigerator, etc. Throughout of that, it allowed us to have, through great migration, provide us great determination. That even
Wow. That's
though,
good.
yeah, even though they called us less than, we did not embrace the less than stereotypical caste system that was placed upon us. We were determined that we were going to rise above it. You got me? And then and not only that, but it also allowed us to create great resistance as well. From Nat Turner to Absalom Jones to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King to Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth and to Medgar Evers. And let's add those who didn't practice, Christianity. There's also, I'm great to say his Muslim's name, but I don't want to mess it up. So I'll just say Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Yeah. And others, great resistance. We weren't just great athletes and great musicians. And yes, music did come from Africa, to America and everything. But those ideologies, man, that great determination, that great resistance.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
We were determined to rise above it and not be succumbed to it.
Where do we, or how do we stir that up again? How do we stir up that seeking, that desire for great determination again?
Well, first, before it becomes corporate, it has to become individual. We as individuals must go back and obtain our passion of determination. And I say that from a personal perspective. Micah, after this last election, worked on the campaign and everything, I was very dejected where I put my head in it. I was an ostrich. I put my head in the sand. I had to go back and get fed with those preachers, speakers, etc., during the movement of civil rights, during the movement of Black Power. I had to sit down and go back and re-listen and learn to reignite my passion. So I could go out and be determined, because somewhere along the line, I was like, and I'm not cracking a corny joke, I tell my wife this, I was like in the movie Thor, when the Hulk went against Thanos and got the mess beat out of him, he couldn't fight anymore. And that's how I was in the social justice fight. I felt this last incident, not just from the victory of Trump, but the craziness behind closed doors within the Democratic Party. This ain't the platform to talk about it. It got yeah. It was beat out of me. So all that being said, or I allowed it to be beat out of me. You as an individual, you have to go back to what has fed you, your determination, whether it's biblically, whether it's through the passion of, the civil rights movement, whether it's the passion of the Black Power movement. Let me add one other phase to that also. The birth of hip hop, social consciousness, from Kumo D to KRS-One. Yeah, as a preacher, I'm listening to it because I have to reignite my passion and my determination. So I hope I didn't go off on a,
No. I think you raise another a critical point of conversation is there is a generational divide.
It is.
That is prevalent within the African American community. I've said it this way. The generation that came through civil rights, once we got to civil rights, Motown hit and everything became, I know you want to leave me, but I refuse to let you go. I mean, everything became about Motown, right? It's a party, everything's good. And it seemed as if that generation left us. And that when hip hop came, watch this, Wayne, Dr. Wayne, it was not the child of Motown. It was the adversary of Motown. It was not complimentary. It was controversial. And it created a divide, I believe, that has taken us, I don't even know if we're there yet, years to fix, right? Baby boomers are certainly moving off. Gen X is becoming the more seniored new demographic, as we're everybody in the Gen X age is getting AARP cards. Hello. We're becoming that now, right? I think we've migrated, interestingly enough, so that we're not too far away in the aspect that we don't condemn and view as adversarial the movement, music, and activities of Gen Z and millennials.
So what you just described, and something I slightly push back on, what you just described historically I forget the name of the book that I read when I started teaching at Cuts, but this has been a movement that has been transcending since slavery. And let me explain what I mean by that. So in the slave quarters, right, we sang Negro spirituals totally different than the way it's been Europeanized. And then when we allowed Caucasians from the North to come down South to tell first generation free slaves that the way your ancestors worship was uncouth and undignified, we abandoned our Negro spirituals and then went to a Europeanized way of singing. When that happened,
Okay, hold it though, Wayne. Hold on. I'm gonna put a pause here for it. Just pause it. Because I want to add to this. It wasn't just white folk who did that.
right, it was us. We bought into it, but it was folks from the Northeast that came down. Yeah. And so what happened?
There is historically the movement, and I can say this as part of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, there was the movement by Paine to come in to stabilize the active and Holy Ghost movement, if you will, that emanated down south. Like we don't act like that in the AME church.
Because it was considered uncouth and
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
And that happened, right? That's when the blues took off. Because now the singing of the blues addressed the pain.
That's good. That's good.
So we went from secular to secular. Now move forward. Now you got the civil rights movement. Now you got the emergence of Motown and everything, right? And to be real, with the production of Norman Whitfield and others, music is just my thing. You know, he was able to tap into social consciousness, right, within music as folks was killing off our musical prophets. You know, Sam Cooke and others that created great change. When we get to the civil rights and when we go from civil rights to hip hop and everything, the one thing we have to identify is that the Jerry Falwell theology and right now,
evangelical right.
Evangelical right started to saturate a theology in the 80s that had us, people of color, thinking that the way to God is individualistic salvation, which I do not deny Romans 10, chapter 9 and 10, but as we were just told to focus on saving souls and learning the word. Same way the slave masters would tell us, don't read, but now we have a different oppressive structure that says, just, you know, save souls, right, and read your word.
You read the word.
Now, when hip hop comes into existence, you know, my Black history teachers wasn't in school. It was KRS-One. It was Kool Moe Dee. It was Chuck.
Right.
You know, Chuck.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, my social conscious fight, one marching for the first time, seeing hate at its worst, but then also globally getting into social justice fight. I didn't know anything about South Africa if it wasn't for hip hop. So, you know, the controversy came not because of hip hop, but the controversy came when corporate, what I would call corporate assimilation and corporate integration came into existence.
I think those are two great terms.
Yeah,
Yes.
when the big record companies started to buy out the small labels,
right,
to control the narrative, and we went from social consciousness to gangster rap, right? And then we went from gangster rap to strip hop. That's what Mecca called it, strip hop, and then everything else. So sorry to give this long narrative.
No, I think this is great.
All the way back to slavery, traces all the way back to slavery, and the patterns come to current existent now.
Yeah, no, I think those are powerful, and clearly I can hear it resonating within the framework of your own theology. Therefore, I know it exudes out not only in your preaching, but obviously in your teaching as well. So for those of you that are in the area, y'all might want to check him out at Palmer, and make sure y'all sit up under his teaching. We've touched it. We've danced around it, Wayne, a little bit. And for a moment, you almost tried to make us go down the rabbit hole of faith and politics.
Mm-hmm.
It is certainly important within the context of the African American experience in this country. Mm-hmm. It does not help us to, just to your point, go to church and not be civically engaged, right? That there is Ooh, did I lose him? Wayne, you still there? Wayne, you there? Or did I
Yeah,
drop?
somehow something happened. Yeah, no,
You
that was me.
there?
Something about sorry. Yeah, I'm here.
No, yo, you good. You good.
Yeah,
That
I had,
obviously
I had a
faith
problem
in
with my
politics
connection. Sorry
is
about that.
critical. Okay, no problem. That faith in politics is critical in the life and times of African Americans. You are one who is not only a analyst of it, but I would call you a practitioner of faith in politics. Um, when you think about um liberation theology, you kind of already have answered this question, but I'm going to give it anyway. Has the black church become too political or not enough in the realm of politics?
Man, that is a great question. I think to a certain degree we haven't become political enough. And then I think there's certain aspects of our brothers and sisters in the black church and multi-black denominations, they've become political for the wrong reason. And let me unpack that. To become political for the wrong reason is not for community gain, it's for self-gain. You follow me?
Sure.
What
I
I
follow
get out
you.
of it? What can
Yeah,
my
yeah.
congregation get out of it? The
Get out of
false
it, right.
seats at the table, right? Like you said, it's not even a corporate boardroom, it's just a reception area. Some of it is even a private bathroom, but hey, master, let me in the private bathroom, so that's good for me. you know,
Right,
uh,
right, right.
so yeah. And the other aspect, there's some churches that just believe that, and I've encountered it with preachers across African American denominations, that I just need to focus on the word,
Yeah,
and that's it. Pastor, we don't need not at this current church that I'm at. We don't need politicians coming into church. Uh, and if it ain't about God's word, we don't need to have it. We don't need to be involved. You try to get them out to go to various meetings to show their presence in the community. They need to see us. The community need to see us because there's a disconnect between the pew and the people in the community. But
hmm,
because we've become so holy and self-righteous, right? And that's a bad cocktail right there, holy and self-righteous, that we begin to look at our brothers and sisters in the community as the oppressors has looked at us.
yeah.
So there has to be a balance with how we civically engage and be prophetically political, but not be political and not be prophetic. And
So what's prophetically political?
what prophetically political, I just came up with that term, but politically,
That's so I'm going to
yeah,
ask you to define it.
prophetically political is being able to speak in political areas without being the politician that's running for an office. And one of the descriptions of politically prophetical, excuse me, prophetically political would be Moses going to Pharaoh to say, "Let my people go." You got me? Um, we should not allow politics to dictate what we should say and what we shouldn't say. Think about it. If that's the case, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King would have never opposed the Vietnam War.
So should we let our politics direct our theology, or should we let our theology dictate our politics?
Your theology should dictate your politics if your theology is rooted is centrally rooted in God and not rooted in ideology.
Okay.
Because what evangelicals are doing now is they are taking their ideology or idiotology, you make the choice, ideology, and saying that it is theology when it's ideology.
Mm-hmm.
If it's
Mm-hmm.
rooted and grounded in God, his spirit, his word, God spoke like the way God spoke to Harriet Tubman, the way God spoke to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, the way God speak to you and I, that's when we allow ourselves to be able to speak to the political structures to say, let my people go.
Wow. So it's been great conversation, and I want to thank Dr. Wayne Weathers for joining us on Theology on Thursday. And just like some of our other guests, what y'all basically have done is you've got a video version of our phone call. This is a typical Micah and Wayne
Except
conversation.
it's longer.
We just and remember, part of this, whole theology on Thursday was to take theology off the bookshelf and make it real in everyday life. And so it's funny because when I thought about it, one of the things I immediately thought about were conversations that I have with people like yourself and Rob Johnson and other people who are all scheduled guests for this season 1 of Theology on Thursday. With all my guests, Wayne, I always ask them about their pillars. And it kind of has changed a little bit from pillars to now I've gone to this whole notion of Mount Rushmores. So I'm going to ask you, give me your Mount Rushmore of faith and politic individuals. So this is the Mount Rushmore of the faith and politic individuals. I'm trying to, let me stay there. Give me your Mount Rushmore. Who deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of faith and politics in your mind?
That's 5 names, right?
4. There's only 4 people. Stop trying to be like the president who wants to put himself up on Mount Rushmore. Cut that out.
So number 1, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay.
That would definitely be number 1. Number 2, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Wow.
Yeah. We cannot have a Mount Rushmore that's just male dominated. Fannie Lou Hamer. Yeah. Number 3 for me would be Steve Biko out of South Africa. Yeah, Steve Biko out of South Africa. And number 4 for me, Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright. Those would be
that is a great Mount Rushmore of people of a combination of faith and politics. That's good. Dr. King, I almost should start exempting him from people's Mount Rushmores, but we're too late in the season, episode season. But Dr. King, Fannie Lou Hamer, Steve Biko, and the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright.
Yes.
The Mount Rushmore of faith and politics for the Reverend Dr. Wayne Weathers. Wayne, thank you for. No. Let me just add this one piece, because normally I take it out the bookshelf or behind me off my shelf. Talk about a book, but I'm gonna throw it out there to you because you're this great thinker. So in today's time, where is it? Who do we need more of? Do we need more James Baldwin, or do we need more Howard Thurman?
Oh my God, man!
Yes, sir. Yes, I did it to you. Yes, I know you. This is the question. You could be mad at me for the rest of our friendship, but I had to. What do we need in 2025? To our viewers, to our listeners, who do we need more of? Thurman or Baldwin?
Man, I can't say both.
No, you can't say both. You got to pick. I'm sorry. You have to pick one.
Oh man, The Fire Next Time was my favorite of James Baldwin. I read a couple of his other books. I got to go with, because of the current context, this is not a slight against James Baldwin, I got to go with Jesus and the Disinherited.
Wow. Okay.
I have to go with Jesus and the Disinherited. Read it a few times. Howard Thurman. Only reason I did that because I couldn't go with both. Really, it's a tie. It's really
believe me, it's tough. I'm not mad at you, but I had to you had to pick one.
I gotta fold my arms on this one. Don't edit that one out. It's really a tie. It's really Baldwin and Thurman, but because I have to make a choice, I have to go with Howard Thurman, Jesus and the Disinherited, because there is a generation that is emerging in the 21st century. The more resources and wealth there is in America, more the disinherited gap widens.
Wow.
Yeah, it widens. Yeah.
Wow.
It's in the disinherited. Yes.
Wow. That's a great point there. So your contention is the more we live in this capitalistic, consumer-driven society, the greater the greater the greater divide. So Jesus and the disinherited.
Yeah, Chris, I know you got to go.
No, you're good.
You know, it reminds me of, back in the 90s, I used to watch, wife in the early stages of our marriage, I used to watch the cartoons, the X-Men, right? And there was a particular scene where one of the X-Men's, they went in a time machine. After all the fighting that they did, they went in a time machine and went into the future and found out that after all of the fights that they engaged with to free the mutants, when he got to the future, their conditions was far more worse than it was in the present. And that's what I think about with Jesus and the disinherited, that regardless of all of the fights, civil rights fights and social justice fights that has taken place from slavery up until now, if those fought and died for us could step into the future and see where we would be today when they were fighting in the 60s, that they would be definitely deeply concerned and grieving right now.
I don't disagree with you. But boy, great. Thank you for answering that. I know that was a tough one. But you know, I knew you could handle it. I knew you were well able and could easily handle all of that. Well, Let me do this. Thank you, Dr. Wayne Weathers, for joining us on Theology on Thursday. Thank all of you for tuning in this week. And wow, this has been a great conversation. And if today's conversation sparked something, if it did something for you, share it with somebody. Do that, because I think what you probably heard today is going to help you see yourself in a better light, see yourself in a better relationship with God. So do me a favor, share what you experienced this week, share this podcast with somebody, and make sure that you join us on next Thursday for Theology on Thursday. All right? Because this is where deep faith meets real talk. I'm Dr. Micah Sims. I will see you in the next episode of Theology on Thursday.
Let's shoot back.